Hello, Patreon. Thank you for being here. Since I posted about this on social media and the response was pretty huge, I assume most of you are aware the news I've been waiting to reveal for so long is my signing a book deal with Simon & Schuster. I'm sure this will bring up a lot of different questions from many people, so today I thought I'd talk a bit more in depth about what this is and what it means. First of all, this does not mean I'm going to stop making the podcast or that publishing books is now the number one priority for me. This brand was built as a podcast. My audience was built through the podcast. There are a lot of reasons I chose to start making Cocaine and Rhinestones as a podcast, and I have no intention of walking away from any of that. Even though my process for making the show almost immediately became the exact same process an author would use to write a book, I have every intention of continuing to prioritize releasing new seasons of the podcast first, then later adapting material from the podcast into whatever package makes sense for each book. This is similar to the approach taken by Tim Ferriss, who has one of the most popular podcasts in the world, from which he later pulls content to publish in some of the most popular books in the world. Since all I'm ultimately doing is rewinding that podcast process a few steps while making sure everything is still coherent without audio clips, I don't expect this to create a lot of extra work for me beyond what I've already done, and there are several reasons the time it does take will be well worth it. The main thing to understand here is that I'm not adapting the podcast into books as essentially just a piece of collectible merchandise to sell to the podcast existing audience. I'm not going to rephrase my own work like a college kid trying to not get caught for plagiarism just to be able to sell you a book that is technically different from the show. That would ultimately only degrade the quality of the product for no good reason at all. I do hope and believe a lot of the podcast's current audience will want to buy this book, especially because I have some other plans for it that I can't talk about yet. I believe consuming these stories on the page without audio clip interruptions will provide a significantly different experience and bring certain elements of the stories more into focus. But please make no mistake. If you've listened to the show, then you do already know the stories because you heard me tell them. You do already know the information because I held nothing back when I tried to do this correctly the first time. You do already know the way I write the sentences because I spent years deciding the best way to write them, etc. I also believe this book will help my work find an entirely new and different audience. After several years of making this show, I'm familiar with the full spectrum of responses to it. I've had hundreds of people ask me to please publish books because they or someone they know cannot listen to podcasts. Even people who do listen to podcasts find that Cocaine and Rhinestones is not like other podcasts they've heard. And for this reason, they have a difficult time focusing on all of the information in each episode because they're only used to approaching something that dense in the form of a book. There are many thousands of people who've tried listening to a few podcasts, hated what they heard, and simply do not take the time to check out recommendations for other podcasts. Even as attitudes toward artistic mediums are constantly shifting, physical books are still viewed as having more permanence and importance than podcasts. Publishing this physical volume with an index in the back makes it much more useful as a reference tool, allowing it to be stocked in public and private libraries around the world, added to syllabuses of various college courses, etc. On top of all that, having the opportunity to publish an avant-garde exploration of country music via dissection of modern Western civilization at such a prestigious publishing house as Simon and Schuster, with all the resources they will put behind it, is going to put this book on the radar of a whole different set of eyeballs than would normally see any book about country music, let alone a podcast. If those people then start listening to the podcast, that's cool. If they never listen to the podcast and just keep waiting for the books to come out, that's also cool. I'm good with however anyone wants to approach this thing, whatever medium works best for whoever it works for. No matter what, I intend to follow through on the original plan I set out with for the first 5 seasons of this show. What I have always said I'm going to do is what I'm going to do. As I have also always said, I have never had a plan for what comes after that because there's no telling what could change about the world or technology or who knows what between now and then. We will cross that bridge when we get there. Another thing I'd like to mention, since it's coming up so soon, I do intend to do some kind of review series on the George and Tammy TV show. Since it's just a one-and-done miniseries, I don't think it makes sense to launch a whole new podcast or really even do any kind of special branding around this. But I know if I don't put out something, then every day for the next several months is going to be full of people asking what I think about the show. So I'll probably just put up some videos on YouTube. I don't think it seems worth doing anything fancy with graphics or even using clips of the show. It's probably just going to be me sitting and talking to the camera the same way I do for Patreon videos. I figure you're only watching it to see what I think about it, so why go further than that with it? I'm not expecting this to be some get millions of views thing. At this point, I don't even know if they're releasing episodes weekly intervals or putting out the whole season at once. But yeah, I will roll with whatever they do and try to get my thoughts on it out there as soon as I can. All right, there it is. I'm excited to move forward with season 3 and all the projects currently in motion, several more of which I still cannot reveal. There are just a lot of irons in the fire right now, which is a great situation for me to be in. You all take care of yourselves, and I'll be back next month.